Hi everyone, it's Julia, your trusted travel expert from Matheson Travel, coming to you this week from Charlotte. I'm obviously in a hotel room. I have a gorgeous view out of the skyline of Charlotte, but I couldn't get the lighting to look right. And I really needed you to be able to see, because this week I have props. I am talking to you this week about guidebooks. When to use them, what to look for when you're buying them, how to use them, and when you maybe don't need to use them. So when you go, when you decide you want to go to a place, you obviously want to do a little recon, a little reconnaissance before you call your travel agent or before you start even looking at booking anything. And there are all kinds of places to do that. Obviously, the internet is a great place to look and shop around. But blog articles or magazine articles or even Instagram pictures, that kind of thing, that just shows you that you want to go to a place, but it doesn't necessarily give you the nitty-gritty. So in that case, guidebooks are still, I think, really beneficial, especially if you're going to lots of different places within either a region or a country. And so when I go, I'm pretty picky about guidebooks. And so when I go into a store, and I do go into bookstores for this, the first thing I do is I find the little section, the travel section, with my region, whichever region I'm going to, and then I pick up the different versions of the book. I literally physically pick them up and feel them, because they can weigh really differently. I mean, even two books for the same exact region, even if they're both paperback and they're both kind of about the same thickness, for some reason they can be one can be way heavier than the other. And that actually does matter, because if you think about it, you're going to be carrying your guidebook around with you all day, usually while you're touring, and you don't want a big, old, heavy book to do that. The second thing to note about guidebooks is, regarding that, with your carrying it around, a really good thing that I do, and this was actually advised to me by Rick Steves, is actually cut out. See, this book I was going all over Southeast Asia, but I wasn't going to certain parts, so I just cut out the parts of that book. Or, my good old Rick Steves book, I actually cut the different pieces of the book apart, and I sort of rebound them with tape, which you really can't tell here, but I rebound them with tape, and it really worked very well. And that way, I didn't have to carry the whole big thing around with me when I was touring around. I only had a little skinny part that I had to carry around with me when I was touring. So that's a really good tip to use. And I mean, if you're like me, cutting apart a book is really sort of horrifying. It was really scary the first time I did it, but it really does. It makes a lot of sense when you're traveling, especially because you don't want to be carrying a lot of books, because you're going to be carrying cameras and water bottles and all kinds of other stuff. So the second thing that you really want to look at when you're purchasing the guidebook, you're going to look you need to look at how much information is in each chapter for each location. And this really is what you need is really dependent on what kind of trip you're taking. I mean, if you're taking a fully guided, escorted tour, you maybe don't even need a guidebook, to be honest, because you're going to be getting information from your tour guide. The trip's already planned for you, so you don't need to really worry about it. I don't recommend that, because I still think that there are side things that you can do that you need to know about, but you don't maybe need the same kind of guidebook that somebody who is going to that same region completely independently would need. If you're traveling independently, obviously you need to know bus schedules, train schedules, logistics. You need really detailed maps of the place, so you know where to explore and where your hotel is in reference to all the other places of interest there in that city. So that's one of the first things I do, is I take it and I start flipping through it and I start looking for the map. And I will tell you, that's one of the reasons why I love Rick Steves, because he has really good maps that make a lot of sense. And so for Europe, I have really become pretty devoted to his guidebooks as far as using them for the maps. I'm trying to find another one. He has really good maps and really good logistical information for getting around. You definitely want to also double check. I got this guidebook for New Zealand back a couple years ago when I was going, and when I got it, I loved it. It was really good and really informative, and it gave me lots of ideas for where I wanted to go, and I folded down all kinds of pages. But then when I was in country, even though I was on a tour for part of my time in New Zealand, it was kind of terrible because it was very superficial. It only had, it's the whole country, first of all, and it's really thin. And it only has a couple pages per, a page or two per city. So it really only had 2 or 3 restaurants to try, 2 or 3 hotels to look at, that kind of thing. Which, again, if you're on a tour, maybe it's okay. It did suffice. But if you want to be traveling independently, that's not going to do it for you. The other thing, you really, there are only a couple companies for guidebooks globally. And it's really funny because, so I bought this book only about 4 years ago when I was planning my big several month trip around Southeast Asia, and it was perfect. I loved it. I used it a lot. I'm actually sad that I cut out some of the sections because I'm looking for them and I can't find them. But it was really good because it was suited to the type of travel I was doing. This is obviously, Lonely Planet is for backpackers, and this is on a shoestring budget, so it's giving me inexpensive hotel choices and lodging choices, guest houses, hostels, that sort of thing. And it's, giving you, like I said, bus schedules and stuff like that, which is when you're traveling for a long period of time independently, you need that. But if you're a little bit older and wanting to travel at a little higher level, which is in just a few short years, I've graduated to that, you're going to want something more, like a Fodor's or a Frommer's or a Rick Steves, although he's pretty budget friendly as well, because they definitely, give you more 3, 4, 5-star hotel options, a little bit nicer dining options, and it's less about the bus schedules or walking directions from the bus or train station to hotels to the CBD. It's just a little higher level. And I will say that all of these companies, Lonely Planet, Fodor's, Frommer's, Rick Steves, they all have really good websites, but for actual information and actual figuring out where you want to go and how you want to go, I still buy the guidebook. I really do, even in this day and age, because you are able then to figure out, I read the guidebook almost cover to cover before I go, and then you figure out what you want to do, and like I said, then you either cut out the parts that you like, cut out the parts that you don't like, that you don't want to take, depending on how that works. And then I go and use the websites, like especially Fodor's Travel Talk forum. Their traveler forum is fantastic, and that's where maybe I ask specific questions that, that you don't need to ask when you're working with a travel consultant. And that was sort of my final point, is if you're working with a travel consultant who's already an expert in the area, then you maybe don't even need to buy a guidebook. If you're going for a week to southern France, for example, you probably don't need to buy a whole big France book like this. Although I know they also have big books for Provence or the Riviera as well. I mean, it's such a popular destination. But if you've got, if you've worked with your travel consultant and you know that you want to go certain places and eat in certain places and, kind of map out your whole time, you maybe don't even need to buy a whole book. Maybe you just need to download a couple, city guides or something like that for the bigger cities where you're going to be visiting. So that's just a few points about guidebooks. Remember, don't be afraid to rip them up. It's really scary, but it actually is very handy and useful. And don't forget that sometimes, these are really well researched. People go year in and year out researching these, and they're not traveling for fun like you or I would do. They are literally checking to make sure that the place is still in business, that it still has the same, prices, that it still has the same amenities that they had last year, that the neighborhood is still the same quality that it was last year. So these guidebooks really are valuable, and so that's why I still very much recommend buying one, at least for your initial research for a trip. So that's it for this week, and I will talk to you next week. Bye-bye.